Hey everyone, it's Lucky with Unfiltered Lucky. And today I want to talk a little bit about the Idaho 4 case. I want to talk about this video footage that has just recently been released of what investigators are telling us is Bryan Kohberger's white Hyundai Elantra driving around the area of the King Roadhouse on the night of the crimes. Now, we've talked about this car before, and we've seen footage that they've released in small clips. But this new footage is basically a video that investigators have pieced together in order to demonstrate what they're saying is Bryan Kohberger's path of travel. Now, I've always wondered, how do investigators positively identify this car without any identifiers? They don't have a license plate in any of this footage. They don't have an image of the driver, and they don't have any identifying marks that would positively identify this car as Bryan Kohberger's car. And something else is that they pieced this video together. And if you watched this video, then you know what I'm talking about when I say that the video quality is extremely poor. Now, some of the video clips is basically just some headlights coming through some bushes, or a car driving behind some trees, or the shadow of a car. So it's not quality footage. There are a few angles where you can almost get a good look at the car, but you still can't get a good look at the license plate. So doesn't that seem strange that they have all of this video footage of this car supposedly driving from Pullman all the way to Moscow, or 10 minutes away to Moscow, Idaho, and then driving around this area, but they don't have one clear image of a license plate from multiple cameras? So all of this footage, all of these different cameras, and still no clear image of either a license plate or Bryan Kohberger driving this car. To me, that seems odd. Investigators pieced this video together. So how do they know for sure that the car in each of these pieces of video is in fact the same car? I mean, if they can't even identify the car, how do they know that it's the same car in every piece of footage? They can't really positively say that this is Bryan Kohberger's car because they can't identify it. So I've always had my doubts about the video footage of this car because it's never really made a lot of sense. I mean, anyone could say that this was Bryan Kohberger's car, but can you prove it? And we know that they didn't have a license plate. They didn't have any, images of this driver, because if they did, they wouldn't have been putting out a be on the lookout for a generic, 2011 to 2013 white four-door Hyundai Elantra. Would investigators be able to prove that the car or multiple cars in this video footage is without a doubt Bryan Kohberger's car? Because in my opinion, I don't believe that they could. Now, Bill Thompson said in an interview that if they wouldn't have had the DNA, it would have been a tough crime to solve. But he believes that with this camera footage of this car, that eventually they would have been able to solve this crime. But I don't believe that. I don't believe that they would have been able to prove that this is Bryan Kohberger's car. Now, there were some really weird aspects of the investigation that had to do with this white Hyundai, because we know that law enforcement found this car and identified Bryan Kohberger on November the 29th. It's in the PCA. It's clear as day Washington State University police located this car and ran the information. Now, they will deny that because they will say that they did not have Bryan Kohberger's name until December 19th. So what is it about this Hyundai Elantra that law enforcement does not want us to know? What is it about them locating this car that law enforcement is trying to hide? Because, like I said, we know they located this car on November the 29th. The video footage of this car, or multiple cars, is crucial to this investigation because it's the camera footage that investigators used to establish a timeline along with Dylan's statements. So, and we've seen how reliable Dylan's statements have been. So they used the footage in order to establish the timeline. So it's important. Now, it seems as though if they have Bryan Kohberger's cell phone data, that they would be able to put that together with this video footage and confirm that this was in fact Bryan Kohberger's car. But of course, they're saying that Bryan Kohberger turned his cell phone off. So they don't have that cell phone data that would put Bryan Kohberger at the King Road house. They don't have that. So they can't really use that to confirm that this is in fact Bryan Kohberger's car, which is odd. It always seems like there's a hang up with the evidence that they're not able to do certain things that would put Bryan Kohberger at this house. They're not able to prove that Bryan Kohberger or his Hyundai Elantra were at the King Road house. Now, something else is that they've said that they believe through Bryan Kohberger's cell phone data that he returned to the King Road house, or at least that area, at approximately 9 to 9:30 that morning, the morning of the crimes. So that's my question. Where is the camera footage from that time? Where is the camera footage from that morning between 9 and 9:30? Those cameras should have still been rolling. Law enforcement was not called until noon. So where's the daytime camera footage of Bryan Kohberger returning to this area? Because that would have been the perfect opportunity to get a license plate or to get an image of Bryan Kohberger driving this car. Where's that footage? So let's talk about December 8th, because we know that they located Bryan Kohberger's car on November the 29th. But on December 8th, Moscow Police Department put out a be on the lookout to the public, and they were asking for any information about a 2011 to 2013 white four-door Hyundai Elantra. Now, when they put this out, they used stock photos of just random Hyundai Elantras. So it seemed weird because there's probably hundreds and hundreds of white four-door Hyundai Elantras in this area. We know that they flooded their own tip lines. They got 22,000 tips about white Hyundai Elantras. So it seems as though somebody, one of the investigators, would have said, maybe we should put some identifying marks or, maybe something unique about this particular car so that we don't get a call about every single white Hyundai that's out there. But now we know it's because they didn't have any distinguishing marks. They didn't have any identifiers. So why would they put this be on the lookout out to the public when they know that they've already found this car on November the 29th? In my opinion, the reason that they put this out on December 8th is because they were introducing this Hyundai Elantra to the public. In my opinion, they already knew that Bryan Kohberger drove a white Hyundai Elantra. And this was their way of introducing this vehicle to the public. So that way, when they finally did arrest Bryan Kohberger, they were able to say, we found this white Hyundai Elantra. So it seemed odd that they would flood their own tip line on purpose. So last night I was watching a video that was put out by Jules from True Crime Reactions. And it was the video footage from 1112 King Road. And it went from 3:30 a.m. to 4:30 a.m. And as I was watching this video, I was thinking to myself, again, how do we know that the vehicle going back and forth is the same vehicle? There were a few other vehicles in this footage. So how do we know that this is the same vehicle driving around the house? How do we know that this isn't a DoorDash driver or an Uber or something like that looking for a house? I mean, without any identifying marks, it's hard to prove that. Now, something else that I did want to mention is obviously the video footage of this vehicle played a major role in law enforcement establishing a timeline. But if you listen between like 4:18 and I think it was like almost 4:30 in the video, you can hear Murphy barking. And he's barking in a way that you can tell that something bad is going on. Something is going on and it's obviously triggering Murphy. He's barking. He's doing his job. He's alerting people that something is happening inside this house. Something that I found interesting was that after the vehicle that they're saying belonged to Bryan Kohberger speeds away and speeds around the corner, Murphy continues barking as if something was really going on. He continues, barking as if the crime was still happening. So I was wondering if investigators took that into account when they were building this timeline. Because it seems odd to me that the car already sped off and minutes later, Murphy can still be heard barking as though he's in distress. It's almost as though the attack is still happening. So I found that interesting. But this is how I feel about this footage. And this is how I felt from the very beginning. From the first time that I saw any type of camera footage that, in regards to this white Hyundai Elantra, I've always felt as though law enforcement wouldn't really be able to prove that this was Bryan Kohberger's car. You definitely wouldn't be able to prove that Bryan Kohberger's car was actually at the King Road house. But I don't even think that they would be able to prove that it was his car anywhere in this area. There's just something about this white Hyundai Elantra that doesn't make sense. Like, in my opinion, there's something up with this car and the way that law enforcement handled this investigation around this car. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. And in my opinion, I've said this before, I feel like this white Hyundai Elantra could definitely have been a red herring. It kind of got our attention away from everything else because we were all talking about this car that nobody could identify. So let me know what you think in the comments. And thanks for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it. And if you liked my video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel. I hope that y'all had an amazing day. We'll see you next time.